I'm Royston, and welcome back to Tea and Crime. What a painful situation. A father reporting to the authorities his daughter was missing. The event took place here in England in the city of Bristol, becoming one of the city's biggest manhunts for a missing person. But how did his daughter disappear? And more to the point, was she going to be found alive? It's an intriguing, brutal and Rebecca Watts, who was known as Bex or Becky by those close to her, was a 16-year-old female student from Bristol, England. She was born on the 3rd of June 1998, and between the autumn of 2011 to February 2015, Becky had seen 17 professionals from 8 different service providers. The reason for that was because life hadn't always been good to this young woman. Her biological parents, Darren Goldsworthy and Tanya Watts, had separated before Becky was born, and as a consequence, young Becky spent her earlier life living with a mother. However, there were concerns raised that her mum neglected her. Perhaps she couldn't cope at the time, which resulted in Becky being placed in care. By the age of 2 or 3, she was out of care, living with her father Darren and his new partner Angie. Angie had a 12-year-old son named Nathan Matthews from a previous relationship. And over time, this young man Nathan developed a real hatred toward his stepsister, which ended in the most evil way anyone could have imagined. When Rebecca was growing up, her life was centred around family and their home in St George, a suburb in the east of Bristol. She was described by her stepmom as being like 2 different people. On the one hand, she was filled with confidence inside the family home where she felt safe and secure. But as soon as she ventured outside, she was timid and fearful. Nathan and Rebecca would constantly battle for Angie's attention, probably due to jealousy and insecurity, which is something we see all the time with youngsters. However, this underlying tension between them grew stronger and stronger as the years passed by. When Becky attended primary school, her teachers reported she was incredibly shy and quiet, which was something her stepmom was very aware of, especially as Becky didn't like being left alone there, to the point that Angie became an unpaid classroom helper, going that extra mile to support her vulnerable stepdaughter. And it eventually paid off as Becky grew in confidence. So all of that hard work that was done to build up her self-esteem was taken away in an instant. Then in the autumn of 2011, when Becky turned 13, Angie was desperately trying to find appropriate help for the young girl and decided to contact the Children and Young People Services to see what they could do. She explained Becky was struggling with school, not being able to face going there anymore. And also, whenever she went outside of her home, her anxiety was sky high. And for some reason, it came out later on in a report that this service described Becky as controlling and lacking aspiration. In addition to that, it came to light Becky was treated as the problem. And although she explained she felt isolated and fearful, those concerns were brushed to one side. Furthermore, Becky was seen by a clinical psychologist where she confided she was fearful of the outside world, plagued by concerns about being abducted. During those sessions, she spoke about her eating issues and the fact that her stepbrother Nathan unkindly teased the teenager about her weight. And not long after this, she was diagnosed with anorexia, which was challenging for the family. Her father Darren explained some of the problems to Kirsty Walk from Newsnight.
So what happened when she became anorexic?
It was a really difficult period for us. She lost so much weight so fast. She was fainting. She had zero strength at all. Some nights she couldn't even get up over the stairs I carried her up.
And how was Nathan's attitude towards her anorexia?
Oh, he was always flippant with her. He was like, oh, she's just doing it for attention.
Because Becky was suffering with anorexia, depression and anxiety, it was decided she'd be better off leaving mainstream school and instead attend a hospital education service. Over time, Becky made a new friend or two, and one of them was a girl named Courtney Bicker.
But her best friend remembers a happy person full of life. Her memory box of mementos is overflowing.
She enjoyed life. She wasn't what I would call troubled at all. Like, every teenager has their problems, but she was happy. Like, there was a lot of things going, like, nice in her life. Like, she was confident in things that she was, like, good at, like, with her makeup and her hair. She was very, like friendly to people. She was nice to people. She always said what was on her mind. We had a lot of banter and lots of, like, we used to joke around a lot, and I think we kind of relied on each other. It's like we were like partners in crime.
While attending the hospital for educational purposes, by the time she turned 16, her confidence was returning again. And not only was she making new friends, but she was getting out and about and had a boyfriend at this point. She became rather fashion conscious and was beginning to enjoy life. However, there were still problems to face as her stepmom developed multiple sclerosis when Becky was still in her early teens. Plus her stepbrother Nathan, well, he didn't believe Becky was ill. He'd make comments she was faking her illness, believing she wanted all of the attention and was nothing more than a selfish, inconsiderate person who found delight in treating her stepmom, his own mother, with contempt. And these kind of verbal attacks would lead to massive arguments. Fortunately, Becky's best friend Courtney Bicker was someone she could confide in. She informed Courtney Nathan had repeatedly told Becky he was going to kill her. And this affected her so much she became acutely scared of him. He'd explained in graphic detail how she would die, even sharing his idea of killing her with a sledgehammer. Every now and then, Becky would talk to Courtney about this as she felt safe with her. These threats started sometime in 2013. And if we just rewind and go back to the time when Becky moved in with her dad and Angie when she was 2 or 3, Nathan at that point was 12. Yet he didn't live with them. Instead, he moved in with his grandmother at the age of 7, remaining there until turning 23, spending most of his time alone in his bedroom, even eating his meals in his room. Now we might ask the question, did he get on with his mother Angie? Well, yes, he did, as he was apparently very close to her. But what about Darren? What was his relationship like with him?
How did your relationship with Nathan develop?
That was quite strained to begin with. He didn't want anyone interfering with him and his mother.
So at the stage where you and Angie got together, Nathan was 12, Danny was 4, Becky was 2. And suddenly Angie wasn't all his.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did he respond towards the other children?
With Danny, he was fine. Absolutely fine with Danny. They just went straight up into the bedroom and started on the video games and things. But no, he never bothered much with Becky at all.
Darren mentioned his relationship with Nathan was quite strained, but it wasn't the worst one. It must have been reasonable enough because Nathan was honoured with being best man at Darren and Angie's wedding in 2013, the same year the threats against Becky's life started. And bearing in mind, Becky was 9 years his junior. From an early age, Nathan suffered from fibromyalgia, which often left him riddled in pain, depressed and anxious. One of his close friends mentioned that his illness made him feel inadequate and useless, yet he continued downplaying what was happening to his little stepsister. Sadly, the underlying tension between them was about to explode. On Wednesday, the 18th of February 2015, Becky spent some time with her friends at a local club, playing skittles, after which she stayed the night at a friend's house. The next morning on the 19th, she woke up early and sent her boyfriend Luke a text before making her way home. Just after 11 a.m, Becky sent Luke another text stating she was jamming, which meant she was dancing or listening to music. Angie spoke briefly to Becky that morning before leaving for a hospital appointment. Luke, in the meantime, responded to Becky's text and was surprised when no more messages came his way, which was unusual. He continued trying to make contact, but what he didn't know was Becky's last text at 11:03 a.m. would be the final message she had ever sent. Nathan also had a girlfriend named Shauna, who had just turned 21 and he was 28. Their relationship began when Nathan was in his early 20s while Shauna was only 14, maybe 15, which is rather disturbing. Unsurprisingly, her family disapproved of this partnership, and it led to Shauna disowning them as she wanted to be with Nathan. She frequently spent time with him at his mother's home, and after a while, she actually became a registered carer for Angie due to her illnesses. Nathan and Shauna were aware of that hospital appointment Angie attended on the 19th, and they actually made their way to her home just after she left. We know this because their car journey was captured on CCTV. It's a route they took regularly, and what they had on their mind for this particular visit was both twisted and disturbing. Once they arrived at the house, Shauna headed straight to the garden for a smoke, and while she was doing that, Nathan went directly upstairs to Becky's bedroom. He placed a mask over his head before knocking on the door. As soon as Becky opened the door, he violently attacked, covering her mouth with sellotape and handcuffing the terrified youngster. Then, he proceeded to beat her unconscious, inflicting more than 40 different injuries that culminated in a death, as he suffocated the 16-year-old. Around the time this was happening, her boyfriend Luke was desperately trying to make contact. After murdering Becky in her own bedroom, her body was placed in a suitcase. Within minutes of this horribly brutal event, Becky was carried to the boot, or as the Americans will say, the trunk of Nathan's car, alongside her phone, laptop and some other items which were placed next to her in the boot in a black bag, making it appear as if she'd gone off somewhere. He slammed the door a couple of times upon re-entering the house to make it sound like Becky had left on her own accord, which his girlfriend heard but was apparently oblivious to what had happened. When Angie eventually got back from her appointment, the couple displayed their sickening callousness by still being there, giving off zero vibes that anything bad took place. Nathan was sitting on the sofa playing on his phone or a tablet or whatever it was. And while everything seemed normal, it wasn't long before people began to realise they hadn't heard from Becky for hours. It was out of character, as she was obsessed with the phone, always using it to keep in touch with people. Yet all of a sudden, she went unusually quiet, forcing others to question her whereabouts. One of them was a boyfriend Luke, who popped round to the home at 5 p.m. on the 19th because she wasn't replying to him as he attempted to contact her by phone. And guess who answered the door? It was Nathan's partner Shauna, who told Luke Becky had gone out. The heartbreaking truth about this was his girlfriend was literally a few feet away from him, lying in the boot or the trunk of Nathan's Vauxhall Zafira. Nathan and his girlfriend stayed at the house until between 6 and 7 p.m. before driving to their own home with Becky's body. Later, during the early hours of the morning, Becky's corpse was removed from the boot and carried into their property. And over the next few days, it became crystal clear she hadn't just gone off on her own accord. Something awful had taken place, but no one knew what it was. The day after Becky disappeared, her parents sensed something was completely wrong and reported her missing. Within days, it became a high-profile case as police organised a television appeal through the media, hoping and praying young Becky would soon be found unharmed.
Bex, if you can see this, get in contact. And if anyone out there knows something, just tell us. Just bring her home safe. If you've got her, then put her somewhere we can find her. We want her home, please.
Police learned through talking to those they interviewed that Nathan and his girlfriend Shauna were actually the last two people in the house when Becky was there. However, they proved themselves very difficult to pin down. In water or via a helicopter. It wasn't until a week later on the 26th of February that Nathan and Shauna were finally available to talk after doing everything they could to avoid that eventuality. Shauna was smiling and laughing in a light-hearted manner, which was definitely not in keeping with the seriousness of a missing person investigation. In a separate room, Nathan was just as bad, even disclosing how he felt about Becky. Both interviews revealed their respective cold-hearted displays. Nathan came across as relaxed while maintaining control, and there wasn't a hint of concern for Becky, and investigators felt rather perplexed by that. And what stood out regarding this couple was the fact their stories were so tight, suggesting they corroborated together to make sure their accounts were in sync. Both said they hadn't seen Becky but heard the door slam, assuming it was Becky leaving. However, at that point the police didn't have any real tangible evidence against them, although they were suspicious. Back at Becky's house, the forensics team made a chilling discovery. Blood was found on the doorframe leading to the young woman's bedroom, but it couldn't be seen with the naked eye. The blood was found in a number of places at a variety of heights within that frame, suggesting a struggle occurred. More importantly, a fingerprint was detected in the blood. As Nathan and Shauna were the last two people at Becky's home when she was there, suspicion continued to fall on them. Therefore, they were interrogated a second time. They both stuck to their stories, explaining they had no knowledge of anything to do with the disappearance, and due to a lack of evidence they were free to go. And who knows, they might have even begun to think they were going to get away with it. However, if they thought that, they were wrong. The blood found on the doorframe of the bedroom containing that fingerprint shockingly came back as a match to, and I'm sure you've already guessed this, but to none other than Nathan Matthews, and as a result, they arrested him and Shauna at her parents' address. You might be wondering why they were at Shauna's parents. After all, didn't she abandon them years earlier for disapproving of a relationship with Nathan? It's weird how, a week after Becky went missing, Shauna went out of her way to reunite with her family. It makes you question whether they did this for the purpose of using that house as a den, a hiding place from the police. The police were still hoping to find Becky alive. The next logical step was to go to the home the couple shared to search it, and what they observed set alarm bells ringing. What a filthy property. To me they looked like a couple of hoarders. But pushing that aside, although Becky wasn't located, additional new evidence was found within the chaos. Somewhere within a ton of clutter, receipts were discovered, revealing someone was up to no good. Items that can only be described as murder equipment were purchased, including a circular saw, protective goggles, gloves and face masks. And what sent a chill down the spine of police officers was this. These items were purchased the day after Becky disappeared, and it was captured on CCTV was on the agenda. And it just so happened Nathan later admitted to doing something to Becky, something that horrified the whole nation of Great Britain. After the two prime suspects sat through several interrogations, which was piling up solid evidence against them, on the 2nd of March, Nathan finally caved in, handing a prepared written statement to police admitting he was actually responsible not only for Becky's disappearance, but also that he killed her. The following day, on the 3rd, he was interviewed again, specifically regarding his written confession, where he broke down in tears. Tears that probably represented the fact he'd been caught. While the statement was read out, He refused to listen to it, covering his ears with his hands. The statement read, "I, Nathan Charles Matthews, accept I'm responsible for the death of Rebecca Watts. On the 19th of February 2015, I attended Crown Hill, St George, Bristol, with my girlfriend Shauna Hoare. In my car, I had a large bag, a stun device, handcuffs, tape and mask. I developed an idea to scare Rebecca by kidnapping her. I wanted to scare her and teach her a lesson. I believe that she was selfish and her behaviour towards my mother was a risk to her health. A few minutes after arriving, Shauna said she wanted a cigarette and went into the garden. I went to the boot of my car, took out a bag that contained the items and went upstairs to the landing before knocking on Rebecca's door. She replied, 'What?' or 'Hello,' and I said, 'Can I see you a minute?' I cannot be sure which order things happened, but I used the items I had to subdue Rebecca. During the short struggle, my mask slipped, and Rebecca was able to see my face. This caused me to panic, and I strangled her while she was partially in the bag." The thing is, he didn't just kill her, but also dismembered her body. The gruesome actions he related to investigators were carried out in the bath at his own home before scrubbing it clean. He stabbed her at least 15 times to release body fluids, and this was done after death. He then proceeded to cut her body up into 8 separate pieces, placing these body parts into boxes and bags before hiding them in a friend's shed, not too far away. 12 days after she went missing, police found the grim condition of the dismembered corpse after Nathan informed them where she was hidden. He explained how he did what he did, while being mindful not to implicate his girlfriend.
I explained to you this morning why we needed to, rather than simply take at face value the written statement that you have given to us last night, that we need to explore what you've told us some more. I know that was difficult for you first thing this morning, but that's what we need to carry on and do, and ask you some more questions.
Can you rephrase? I don't know what questions you need to ask, but obviously you said something about Shauna. Can you rephrase it?
Mm-hmm.
So we can include basically everybody in it and not use her name. Like,
do you want me to say
like
the other person? Is it just saying the name?
Just include everybody in it. Like, obviously she's in. Obviously, it will be included in it, but include everybody. Don't say her name.
Okay.
It was obvious he didn't want Shauna's name associated with this crime, as his deception made it evident he was trying to protect her, but the police weren't buying that. Matthews claimed he strangled Rebecca, but a post-mortem examination concluded she'd been suffocated, which takes a lot more force. Shauna herself tried to explain how she had nothing to do with this yet in contrast to her claims, DNA associated with Shauna was found on the inside of a safety mask and on a knot in one of the bags used to wrap Becky's remains up with, which unquestionably indicated she was involved. And this was part of the evidence exposing both of them as liars. And something else of a sinister nature was eventually exposed, justifying any suspicions the police had about Shauna. This evil couple shared an unnatural interest in attractive teenage females, and this fact was backed up by evidence found on phones and computers belonging to them, showing how they had a common sexual interest in petite teenage girls. Both of them clearly had a fascination with young girls similar in age to Becky. They'd often talk about their fantasies, as highlighted in text messages a couple of months after the murder. And for Nathan to claim he acted alone in killing his stepsister and disposing of her body in such a grotesque way, without Shauna's knowledge, was absolutely untrue. All of the evidence accumulated pointed to their joint guilt in a sexually motivated crime. Therefore, Matthews was found guilty of Becky's dreadful murder and got 33 years in prison, while Shauna was unbelievably found guilty of manslaughter instead of murder and sentenced to 17 years. The heartbroken family and all of their friends were finally able to put Becky to rest as hundreds of people attended the funeral on the 17th of April 2015. The streets were littered with heartbreak as people watched the procession as she was taken to church by carriage with white horses. Her father released a single white dove and simply said, "Bye, Bex," as mourners were moved to spontaneously applaud. Becky's white coffin was decorated with beautiful pink roses and painted with a blue ribbon. It was carried by those who loved her dearly, including her heartbroken boyfriend, Luke. Even the horses wore pink feathers, as it was all they could do to say their goodbyes to such a beautiful young girl whose future was drastically cut short at the hands of two very dangerous and evil individuals. And what got me thinking, and I'm not trying to pass the blame, but during the last 3.5 years of Becky's life, she'd been seen by, 17 professionals from a variety of services, who sadly didn't provide the help she needed. And this demonstrates how the lives of our young people need appropriate support, and for these organisations to work together to make sure that happens. Because potentially it could mean the difference between life or death, as Becky's parents found out.
I just miss her. I wish she was still here. I miss everything, even the arguments.
Yeah. 10 o'clock every night, I expect that door to come and her to come through and say, "Oh, cook us some tea, Dad." But it never does. But every night I still look out, I still listen out for it. It's ridiculous. It's been gone months now. And yet I still listen out for it.